O Lord, in the hushness of this preaching moment, touch our hearts and give us the assurance that when our very lives is hanging on what somebody else has to say about us, we pray that we will have the kind of faith that will remind us of your word, that there will be nothing that can separate us from you. Be now our defender and our protector, that there might be no condemnation against us. In Jesus' name I pray. And the people said, amen. And that's what I want to talk about for a little while this morning. No condemnation. No condemnation. And I just want to pull from that piece in the 11th verse where Jesus told the woman, neither do I condemn you. Neither do I condemn you. I don't know if you all remember this, but back in 2014, and this went all over the world. In 2014, I think it was around May, there was this 25-year-old pregnant Pakistani woman, and she was beaten to death. She was beaten to death by male relatives. Why did they beat her to death? Because she married the man that she loved instead of marrying the man they said she was supposed to. And the one that they had arranged for her was her cousin. She was beaten to death. Among those male relatives was her father, her brother, and the cousin that she was supposed to have married. And you know what they beat her with? Bricks and clubs. 25 years old and pregnant. They said it was an honor killing. Why is it that women are the only ones who can bring shame on the family? That's what her daddy said when the police arrested her daddy. He said she has brought shame on the family. And I have no regrets doing what I did. Women catch it, y'all. They catch it internationally. They catch it nationally. They catch it in our churches. They catch it at home. At home. And if God were to say, I'm going to take every woman off the face of this earth, a whole lot of men would be hopelessly lost. Doomed. Because some of them jokers can't do nothing for themselves. I know all of you remember October 1991 when Anita Hill testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And by the way, I believe that committee was headed by then Delaware Senator Joe Biden. All right. And true or not, in my opinion, is beside the point. But Anita Hill told her story of an alleged sexual harassment by a man in a powerful position, Clarence Thomas. And people watch that thing nationwide because some of us are fascinated by the drama between power and sex. And we wasn't born yesterday, but those in positions of power and authority, they have always done some things that they ought not to have done. Women. John tells us about this drama of power and sex involving a woman who was caught, they say, in adultery. And it's a fascinating story because in the story, Jesus says nothing about the accusation, nothing about the whereabouts of the man, because I always talk, grandmama said it takes two to tango. Nothing about the whereabouts of the man, nothing about the death sentence hanging over this woman's head. John does not even take the time to mention, but John does take the time to mention that Jesus wrote something undisclosed on the ground. And so in the story, they who bring someone to justice violate the laws of justice because they were supposed to produce at least two or more witnesses. And the very fact that they did not tells me that the issue was not to resolve a legal matter. The issue was to try to do something against Jesus because they dislike Jesus. Don't you know that when people dislike you and they're in a position where they can use their position to do something to get at you, you better look out. How many church meetings have been called here at this place? Because somebody in a position of leadership did not like what was going on, and so they pulled everybody together, folk who hadn't been to this church in 50 years. They brought this woman to Jesus so that they could make him look like a fool. They're going to shut him down. They're going to discredit him. I remember growing up with folk used to plant the potatoes in the field and they go back and harvest the field. Y'all ever seen one of them fields after they? Man, that's what they were going to do to Jesus. They were going to tear Jesus up just like they used to say a tater field had just been plowed. They were going to do him in. Earlier that day, they sent the police for Jesus with a warrant to arrest him. It's in the story. They came back, where's Jesus? Why didn't you arrest him? The Pharisees wanted to know. And do you know what the police said? Never in our lives have we heard a man preach the way this man preached. suspect that might be some of my problem here. That y'all ain't never heard a man preach the way I preach. Surely you don't mess around and let this man deceive you too. This woman's life is on the line. And they have no problem putting her life in Jesus' hands. Robert, is that Julia sitting back there? Nope. Okay, I guess not. All right, moving on. All right. They have no problem putting this woman's life, because whether she lives or dies is going to be based on what Jesus says. And so look at them. I want you to see them now. Jesus is in the temple teaching. See it? He's in the temple teaching. When here they come, dragging this woman. She did not go there on her own intuition. They were dragging her there before everybody. Now, my thing is, if they caught her in the very act, that poor lady probably just had time enough to wrap the bed sheet around her naked body. We caught this woman, they said. Look at how people so determined to get at you will do anything. We caught this woman. Well, how did you caught her? Who told you she was there? And so they use this woman as collateral damage. And they are willing to stone her to death, all because they don't lack Jesus. They don't lack Jesus. That's how people work. If they can't get at you, they'll get at somebody that you lack. Somebody who admires you. That's just how that. Well, why is it that Jesus does not condemn this woman? First reason is this. Jesus has problems when religious people treat people as though they are nothing. Jesus got problems with that. The text says the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, making her stand before all of them. Sometimes I laugh to myself when people who think they got a little weight try and throw their weight around. People who think they got a little power, but yet they abuse their power. And here they are using a woman to set a trap for Jesus. Now, if y'all don't remember nothing else I say, remember this. Our concern ought not only be about the victimization of society by dangerous people. Listen to me now. All of the dangerous people ain't out there on the street corner. All the dangerous people ain't the one selling drugs. A whole lot of dangerous people are so-called decent people, respectable people. Where they at? In the church. using people, using the church to their advantage. Yes, sir. In the Apocrypha, and for those of you who do not know, the Apocrypha are those books of the Bible that did not make the final cut, so to speak. Okay. All right. See, what we got just didn't drop down from heaven. Okay. Centuries and centuries ago, when the church began to organize, they got together in one of their big meetings and decide what books were going to go in the Bible. And so you have what is called as the Apocrypha, the lost books of the Bible, so to speak. And really, when you look at the Bible the Protestant church uses, and you compare that with the Bible the Catholic church uses, it's two different Bibles. Two different Bibles. But anyway, in the Apocrypha, there is this book called Susanna. And Susanna was a very beautiful young woman, but there were two guys, two rulers in the church that decided that they wanted her. They wanted her. And when she ignored their advances, when she would not go along with them, do you know that they had her arrested? Yes, sir. Lied on the poor woman. And they were getting ready to put her to death. Lying people who are supposed to be doing the work of the Lord. But one young man in the crowd had enough wit to do a cross-examination that has been like any cross-examination in the world. And when the truth came out, two older religious leaders in the church were put to death. You better be careful how you go around throwing your weight around, how you go around using what little power you think you got. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying this because there's a movement going around called Christian nationalism. Keep on shouting you on it and not being aware of what's going on. Do you know what the Christian nationalism movement wants to do? They want to eat away at civil rights. They want to undercut the integrity of democratic elections and democratic principles. They want to endorse violence if necessary. Malcolm X came along talking about by any means necessary, and he was a traitor. Yet here they come in the name of Jesus advocating that if you got to use violence, use violence. It's all right when they do it. January 6th of that had been black folk going to Washington, D.C., to assault the Capitol building. They would have cut every last one of them down. We got to be concerned. And we got to be concerned about how women are treated everywhere. Everywhere. They work the same job we work. And some of them are more qualified than a man will ever be. And yet, they're the least paid. I keep telling y'all, if the women at Rafting Creek Baptist Church leave and go down the road and start another church, I'm going with them. I ain't gonna stay here with y'all. Secondly, Jesus had problem with them because they held this woman accountable not only for what she did, but they were holding her accountable for what the man did. That's the culture we live in. And a lot of reason are many women who get raped don't want to report it because they don't want to end up in a courtroom to make it look like their rape was their fault. Same innuendos. Why the woman got to be penalized for what they do and then for what we do? Man go and beat the crap out of his wife, out of his girlfriend, and then say, see what you made me do? Bust that joker upside the head and say, yeah, see what you made me do. And yet, if you assault her, the woman's the one going to jail. This woman, and one cannot help but hear the dualism dominating within their chauvinism and sexism. This woman was taken in adultery, caught in the very act. How ironic that the unseen man was never caught in the very act with this woman. Alan D. Callahan, he is a New Testament scholar and author, and he does a piece on the Gospel of John, and he makes a rather interesting statement regarding the accused woman. Dr. Callahan said, in every age, listen to this, in every age, hypocrisy is always but a stone's throw away from religious zeal. See, y'all don't believe me, but you better listen to me. Religious people are some of the most dangerous people in the world because a lot of these religious people, they don't know the Lord. They don't know the Lord. Another case in point where women are also held accountable for what men do to them. Again in 2014, February, I mean, this thing went worldwide. There was this 18-year-old Ethiopian girl, 3 months pregnant. She was gang raped in Africa. When a video surfaced showing this woman being sexually abused, she was arrested and charged with indecent exposure. She was arrested, 2018. All right. She was charged with adultery, prostitution, and at that time she came very close to being stoned to death. But those charges were dropped when they were able to prove in court that she was a divorced woman. She was not married. She would have been sentenced to time in jail, but that sentence was suspended because she was pregnant. The men who raped her, they only got a few lashes, and they were able to go on about their business. The two men who were responsible for distributing the video, they received a few lashes as well. But they pronounced her guilty. She was raped, but they pronounced her guilty of what she did, being raped, and they held her responsible for what they did to her. Listen, I don't care if a woman walking around butt naked. That does not give any man the right to force themselves on her. Now, y'all get mad about that. That does not give them the right to do that. And then the last thing I want to say is this. Why Jesus did not condemn the woman. Because most of us religious people, we don't know nothing about throwing compassion and grace at people, but we'll throw a stone at them in a minute. Jesus says to the woman, does no one not condemn you? And she says, no, Lord. And Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. I don't care what you have done in your past. But when God looks at you, God doesn't look at you on the basis of what you did in your past. When God looks at you, God sees the image of God's divinity in you. And that's what we got to start seeing when we look at people. Why we got to label people all the time? Why can't I look at you and see God in you? Why can't you look at me? And so, oh, they go to old crazy Melvin Mack. Wonder what he gonna say today. Why can't you see the God in me? Not that it matters. We don't have the freedom to feel free to denigrate and despise people just because we feel we can do it. Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. There was a lady, her name was Anna Julia Cooper. She wrote an article one time entitled Womanhood, a Vital Element in the Regeneration of the Race. Now here's a lady, she was born in 1858 and she died in 1964. But listen to what she says. I'm going to read this. She wrote, by laying down for women the same code of morality, the same standard of purity as for man, by refusing to countenance the shameless and equally guilty monsters, talking about the men, who were gloating over her fall, she says, Jesus graciously stooped in all the majesty of his spotlessness to wipe away the filth and the grime of her guilty past. And Jesus says to her, go in peace and sin no more. That's all I got to say to you this morning. Go in peace. Stop acting like you got all the answers. Stop acting like you're the only one that's right. God's grace. Do you know what grace is? Grace is God giving us another chance, God giving us another opportunity. If you got a stone in your hand to throw at somebody, put it down. God's grace allows us to pull the big old log out of our eye instead of focusing on the little speck in somebody else's eye, God's grace gives me the sense to know that, look at here, I got to sweep around my own door. I got to get my own life in order. God's grace. Go in peace. If you got a grudge against anybody, go in peace. If you're figuring out how to get revenge back at somebody, go in peace. Somebody been lying on you, calling you everything but a child of God, go in peace. Yes, sir. Why? Because the Bible tells us that God did not send his son to condemn the world, but for all who believe in him might be saved. And so I close on this. The only one qualified to condemn her does not. And when you leave this place today, don't even let it enter your mind about what somebody think about you or what somebody is condemning you. God's got you. And God is holding you up right now. Not them people who don't like you. God is holding you. God is blessing you. God is keeping you. And some glad morning. Oh, I don't know about you, but my glad morning is coming. Some glad morning when I have to stand before him. I can stand before him, not worrying about what some of the people at Rafting Creek said, not worrying about what some people from my past said. I don't even want to hear the well done. I ain't worrying about that. But if he could just ask me, didn't you have some people who were condemning you? Lord, they ain't here.